Week 4 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks to get on the wire this week. The first guy, C.J. Stroud of the Houston Texans. So C.J. Stroud, so far in his first 3 games of his NFL career, he's gone out there and he's played pretty good football and he's had good poise, this Stroud, and that's why he was one of the top picks in the NFL draft, obviously. So right now, he's got some decent wide receivers he's got a good rapport with. Pretty decent back in the backfield with Dameon Pierce. And like I said, this kid's gone out there and he still hasn't thrown an interception in the first 3 games of his NFL career. He's got good poise, he's got good pocket presence, and he just knows when to make the smart plays. So the first few games of his career, week 1 in Baltimore, 242 pass yards, 20 rush yards, and that one a fumble loss. Then week 2 versus Indianapolis, 384 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, and a fumble loss. And then week 3 at Jacksonville in a nice victory, a blowout victory, 280 pass yards and 2 touchdowns with 14 rushing. So that right now, Stroud's available in 80% of fantasy leagues here. He's got a tough matchup, no doubt about it, versus the Pittsburgh Steelers coming to Houston. But like I said, this guy goes out there, he can make all the throws so far in the early going. I know he's got a couple fumble losses, but in terms of throwing interceptions and making plays with a guy like Tank Dell, who's definitely emerging in this offense, and Nico Collins, a solid wide receiver as well. I think C.J. Stroud could be a play that can help fantasy owners in a big way. And right now, if you need a quarterback with guys like Trevor Lawrence struggling, Dak Prescott not really doing much, now Mahomes banged up, we'll see if he misses time or not, even though I don't think he will. But anyway, with a few guys struggling and a few injuries around the league here, I think Stroud's a good ad this week. Top priority at the quarterback position. The next quarterback's Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos. So Russell Wilson in this Bronco team, I know they were 0-3 in the season, but in terms of putting up fantasy points and decent numbers so far in the early going, Wilson has done that. And this Denver team has been trailing for the most part this season here, where they got to drop back and throw a ton. Week 1 versus Vegas, 177 pass yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 2 versus the Commanders, 308 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, and into 56 rushing and a fumble loss. And then week 3 in a crazy blowout loss, losing by 50, 70-20 to the Dolphins. 306 pass yards, a touchdown, and into. But this week here, a great matchup at the Bears that just got torched, giving up 41 points to the Kansas City Chiefs. So right now, 2 bad teams going at it, obviously, with the Bears and the Denver Broncos. And is a streaming option, not available in many fantasy leagues. He's only out there right now is Wilson in 44% of fantasy leagues. He's a quarterback I would add as a streaming option, but like I said, he might not be out there in a lot of leagues. Next quarterback, Andy Dalton of the Carolina Panthers. So it looks like Andy Dalton might get another start, and he came off a big fantasy day. I know a lot of garbage time and catch-up time it was for Andy Dalton, but in his season debut with the Panthers, 361 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 11 rush yards. So we know Dalton, there's games throughout the season. We saw last season with the Saints, where out of nowhere he'll put up 25 to 30 fantasy points. And that's what exactly he did. And now right here, week 4 versus a team he's very familiar with, obviously, in the Minnesota Vikings, coming to Carolina. Defense that's vulnerable to the pass. We've seen quarterbacks go off versus this Minnesota defense all season. We saw it this week here with Justin Herbert having a monster ball game. Saw it with Jalen Hurts in week 2. And also in week 1, we saw even Baker Mayfield have a decent game. So right now, Andy Dalton, if you're a desperate 2-quarterback league or deepest leagues, 18, 20-team leagues here, he's available in 98% of fantasy leagues. And there's a streaming option as well versus a pretty bad defense here. He's definitely a quarterback to add this week. Next QB's Jameis Winston of the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr, he went down with a bad shoulder injury. And right now, we'll see how long he's going to be out. But right now, if he's out, Jameis is going to step in and take the reins at quarterback. So he came in about late third quarter, was Jameis in that ball game at the Packers, where they lost after the Packers came back from 17-0. But anyway, Winston came in 101 pass yards. And we know Winston, he throws a lot of interceptions throughout his career, but also a quarterback with a big arm. And they got some solid weapons, obviously. Chris Olave over there. You got Michael Thomas, who so far has been staying healthy. Rashid Shaheed, Jawan Johnson, and now Alvin Kamara coming back to the backfield next week. So right now, if you're desperate for a quarterback in deepest of leagues, a pretty decent matchup here for Jameis Winston versus former team, the Tampa Bay Bucks. And if he's going to start in this game, you know, he's going to want to stick it to him. So right now, but Winston's available 99% of fantasy leagues, and we've seen what Winston could do if he just gets time and can make plays. And with a decent wide receiving core, he's a quarterback I would add this week. In the final quarterback I look to add is Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So I know Stafford, he didn't play yet here on Monday Night Football, but right now this season, a few weapons they've definitely already discovered here is this Los Angeles Ram team. Puka Nacua off to a crazy 2-game start. Tutu out well. You got Kyron Williams out of the backfield to catch the football, running between the tackles, Tyler Higbee, and then you get Cooper Kupp back sooner than later, hopefully. So right now, good matchup here week 4 at the Indianapolis Colts. A dome game, which is always a plus. Colts defense gives up the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I know Lamar Jackson, he didn't throw the football well, but he did rush for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in this one. So right now, Matthew Stafford with all those weapons going, and here, a good matchup in Indianapolis. Always the plus, like I said, indoors. Available not in many fantasy leagues, but a decent streaming option, in my opinion, in 45% of fantasy leagues. He's a quarterback I look to add this week, so that's a few quarterbacks I look to add here in week 4 of the fantasy football season.